what I'm excited about and why I love to share my story is I was at the classic performance perfectionist, always jumping through the hoops, trying to do all the things until the wheels fell off the bus. Going back, if we had to reverse, like being born and raised in South Africa, we have a little bit of a different mentality where you have to be a bit tough because the environment we were living in was not guaranteed. Political instability was the norm. Back in 95, when the internet first came out, my husband and I were like, whoa, this is going to change the world, right? And it did. So we were so right. But the opportunities in South Africa were very limited, and we were really had this vision of wanting to do things on a bigger scale. So we actually moved to England. So at the time I was pregnant with my second, and we moved country in winter, and we arrived and we're like, oh my gosh, what have we done? All of those, okay, God, did I hear you right? You've given me this vision of all the things, but he didn't tell me back then how long it would take. Like, FYI, it takes 10 times longer than you think. But anyway, there's always the seasons we go through in that process. And then eventually 5 years after being in England, we moved to the USA because my husband's internet business was getting more clients here. So so now we're settled here. But in that process, both my husband and I have been always entrepreneurial. So we've always, between the two of us, we've had 3 businesses. I was always doing the things, always the next thing, the high performer, always trying to be perfect and always trying to, I always say I've had my membership to Control Freaks Anonymous, and since I gave that up, I'm so much happier because now I feel like I don't have to be all the things. But God had to really challenge me on that because I was like, I have to have the blueprint and the list, and I need to know exactly where we're going, and I need to know the whole plan before I even take a step of faith. So he's like, honey, that's not how it works. So of course, to say I had a bit of an attitude with God, always second guessing and questioning him. And he's like, insert eye roll, here we go again. And I've learned a thing or two that sometimes it's not worth arguing with God when he wants to move you along and when he says it's time to move and leave the old. And my husband and I are the classic examples of totally burning the ships. Sold the house, the car, we even donated, gave dogs to our friends who would raise them for us. Started all over again, not once but twice in 2 years. So sometimes, the crazy ideas require crazy faith. I probably spent about 12 years just going, pushing until I literally hit burnout and breakdown. We all think we're just superhuman, super mom and multitask, and we can do all the things, and it's fine when you're working on adrenaline until your body goes, no, that's not going to work anymore. So I would say I celebrated my 40th birthday depressed and crying and like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with myself? That whole midlife crisis thing is real. But what I had realized is, I had always been doing the things, the expectation of what society expects you to be, the good wife, the good mother, the perfect mom, the entrepreneurial, making money and doing this and leading. But I kind of forget to fill my own cup. So to say I sulked with God and was like, I'm not talking to you. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. It was really like I had to really dive into what is it I believed about myself. And physically, like I have never felt grief and physical burnout like that before, where you literally feel like you've been in a punching ring, where your body aches. Like I couldn't even hold a conversation. My mom would be like, can I call you? And I'm like, I can't even talk. I just need to text you. Otherwise, I just, no. And it was almost like God was allowing me to get to the bottom of the barrel in order for me to stop and to listen, to say, actually, this isn't what I want for life. And this is what isn't God's plan for me to be working and living in this kind of situation. So, I spent like 18 months really seeking the Lord and just going through inner healing and resting, which for me, a go-getter, to sit on my hands and do nothing. And I, bless all the stay-at-home moms there. I just know that I cannot just be at home doing the laundry and the kids. I'm like, I'll be honest, it drove me crazy. Like, I was like, are we seriously doing this again today? Can't we do something more fun? And he's like, no, you're going to fold the laundry with a good attitude. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, you're complaining, we're going to do it again. And I'd be like, having a sulk, right? So he'd have to take me right back to being faithful in the little things. So God was, taking me through all the process of things that I needed to learn on fast forward, because I'd spent so many years in denial. And that's the thing, I'd realized that I'd been praying for breakthroughs of things, and God help me this. And he's like, you haven't done the last thing I asked you to do. How about before you ask me for something new, just like us as parents, like go and make your bed and brush your bed and brush your teeth. I'm not going to give you something until you've been faithful for the little. So God works the same way, but yet we fight it. It's painful, but it's necessary if we want to step into the new. So, through that process, I've been a journalist since I was a kid, and always writing down things. And I was journaling this whole process, all my complaints and experiences. And God's like, now I want you to share that in a book. And I'm like, excuse me, say what? He's like, no, you're going to do this. I was like kicking and screaming. But eventually I'd realized, he very clearly said to me, you ask the answer to someone else's prayers. Someone else is praying for a breakthrough and you hold it within your hand. And you not sharing is being selfish. So just get over yourself, put yourself out there and start to share. You will be surprised how your testimony, like the blood of the lamb and the word of the testimony, breaks through other people's barriers and you help to pioneer a path. So anyway, suffice it to say, I did write the book, and in 2018 it came out, Warrior to Warrior, A Mother's Journey from Fear to Faith, and it literally was my personal testimony of fighting spiritually, mentally, physically for my own healing as well as my child's. Like, there was some major deep spiritual warfare that I had to learn. For me, it was like God was always wanting to give me what were the desires of my heart. I mean, I remember being a 9-year-old writing, saying, one day I want to write books and stories for people. And he's like, remember that idea you had when you were little? I'm going to bring that true. But you've been so stuck on the path of do the business thing or do the studies and or constantly learning, thinking I'm lacking something because I don't have the knowledge, or feeling I didn't get to go to the traditional model of college, but I did the life college, right? But it took me years to admit that I felt like I was missing something, or I was less than because I didn't have that college degree. But in the process, God showed me, he says, you don't have to do the thing that society says is the thing to do. You can learn through other ways. And as I look back, I realized I was really hard on myself because I felt like I wasn't living up to expectations of what was expected. And I realized when I got myself sucked into that path of following the corporate grind or the tick the boxes and do the perfect thing, I was like, I finally arrived at a place and I didn't want to be there. But not many of us are brave enough to follow the seeds of the path that will take us to where he wants us to be. But it's okay. Doesn't matter. He still uses everything. It took me 5 years to write the first one, and now it takes me 3 weeks to write a book when I have an idea. The one that's recently come out is called Unstick Your Mind, Shift Your Mindset, Develop Grit, and Break Barriers. Now that took 3 years of research. Really got fascinated, what is going on up here? I know that we have the spiritual side, but we also have the physiological side of how our brain works. So I dove into neuroscience, reschooled into being a leadership coach. So yeah, I spent 3 years really researching this. And so I'm really excited. I'd say this would be my signature body of work that it's taken me this long to come to share about. That now I have this focus of, I know what my mission is. I've stopped fighting God, just take over the steering wheel. And I'm just sitting in the back seat going, la, 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 la. And it's so much more fun. No, I'm a full-time author, but also what I do is I do speaking and training workshops. I do have a signature course that I've developed over the last 5 years too. It's all under the Unstick Your Mind brand. So if you go to unstickyourmind.com, you can hear more about it. So we have the book and then we have the course. But I also have a bunch of goodies on my website at mimikacooney.com. You can see there I have my own YouTube channel and I regularly put out encouraging content. You can see a list of my books, and there's a bunch of freebies like downloads, and I actually have a free book, first series in my mindset. It's called Mindset Makeover. So as I said, just connect with me online. I'm everywhere on social media as Mimika Cooney, and I'd love to hear from them. Just let me know you heard me on the podcast.